the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behaviors so you won't click. No complicated code, just tried and true brain science at play. Social engineering for good, the best defense is in your mind today.
Welcome to Phishing for Answers. The opinions expressed here are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views of their employers. Get ready, because the next live episode of Phishing for Answers is starting right now with your host, Joshua Krumbaugh, the CEO of Phish Firewall.
Psychology is the new firewall, where human insight trumps every trick. We're not hacking systems, we're hacking behavior so you won't click.
All right. Oh, this is going to work. Oh, there we are. Okay. Well, welcome to another episode of Phishing for Answers. Today, I am here with Luis Muniz. He is the Senior Vice President of Cyber Risk at Kroll. I think I said that correctly. Luis, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Luis Muniz, SVP Cyber Risk at Kroll, part of their proactive cyber risk advisory services. I've been in the IT world for over 30 years at this stage. I've worn many hats. I started off as a Lotus Notes domino application developer, but my career...
Lotus Notes. Oh, man.
Yes.
That's wow. I just had a
I miss
flashback. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. That's just blast from the past.
But my career took me down the infrastructure side and messaging side. So I didn't end up being the developer I thought I was going to be. I've worn many hats, done engineering, administration, architecture from a systems perspective and infrastructure perspective, then moved into leadership, and then eventually moved into the cybersecurity side when the email spam filters started moving to a more security device versus just get rid of your spam and the clutter of mail that wasn't important. It started becoming more of a security device, and that was kind of my first step into the security world. Prior to joining Kroll, I was heading the infrastructure and cybersecurity program at a top 50 law firm based out of New York City. So happy to be here, and hopefully we can have some fun.
Oh, I think we're definitely going to have fun today. So tell me, I mean, you started out technical, switched to leadership. In terms of the social aspect of leadership, what has been the most, eye-opening aspect of it?
The most eye-opening for me was really understanding politics and how to get through all the politics once you move into a leadership role. Really getting that view of what prevents the engineering folks or the technical folks from executing engagements based on reality, sort of say, right? Politics really drives what's going on in the organization, and it doesn't always line up with what you're positioned or capable of doing from a technical perspective. Organizations have a whole lot of technical debt, which add bumps in the road to achieve some of the objectives that the leadership is driving from a strategy perspective. And the politics don't always make those bumps in the road very clear going up the chain, right? So that was something, maneuvering that and learning how to play politics, but also keep honest, since I came from the technical side, and making sure that they understood, hey, this is great, we can achieve this, but these are the things we have to do in order to get there. And this is realism versus it's not going to happen in a week, because it's not about checking a box, which I learned a lot of strategies appeared that it's just checking a box and we're there, we can get there. It's not that easy, and trying to maneuver that was probably the biggest thing that was an eye-opener, because I always thought as an engineer or administrator that it was being communicated clearly. I didn't realize the lack of communication of what it really took to get something done. And I just thought that they pushed down fake or unrealistic targets, knowing what it really took to get there. And it turned out that 9 out of 10 times they really don't understand what the bumps or the challenges are to really get something done. And that's why they push down such aggressive timelines and
Well,
um,
and I mean, those timelines are driven by client demand, and so, I'm running a software company.
yes.
I'm sure if my developers are listening, I'll get some hate mail from this, but, at the end of the day, the timelines really aren't dictated by them or or really even their capabilities.
Yes.
It's dictated by what the client needs when they need it, and I know, having been a software developer, that was my biggest frustration was, that we would get these tasks. They would give us these absolutely unrealistic deadlines, sometimes unrealistic features that were being requested, and we would just have to do the best we could.
Yes. Exactly.
But
Exactly.
that is the nature of development, and that's why they make the big bucks, right?
I don't know. Do they? I thought the security guys make the big bucks these days.
I think it's a tie. They're both up there. Man, a good developer makes really
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I guess average developer probably not as much, but like if you're really good, you make seriously good money on the development side.
No, I've met a lot of excellent developers that you're just in awe on the stuff that they're able to make happen.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
absolutely, it's all
But
about having the
to
right people in the right seat on the bus.
that, we see AI getting smarter and it can already code and do a pretty good job. In fact, I learned a trick the other day that was brilliant, and it's upped the capability of AI for coding at least at my company, and I think at a bunch of others. But I was reading this paper and it says if you ask the AI to improve its code iteratively, it'll get 10 times better. And it did. The first time it's like, oh, well, I forgot logging here. I'm going to go add in better logging. And then it's like, oh, well, this is crap logging. We're going to use this instead. So now we've got proper logging that can integrate with other tools. And it's like, well, what about this feature? I think we need to do this, and we need to make this more robust. And so, to that, I really think very soon developers might be one of the first industries to really get hit by AI. Now, I think the developers who know how to use AI are still safe. But if they don't learn how to use AI, I think they're going to get run over real quickly. What do you think? I mean, AI is changing everything. It's a new world.
So I'm a little skeptical when it comes to AI. I've seen really good scenarios where AI is very efficient. But I think right now it's the new buzzword, and there are a lot of organizations, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's from a development perspective, if you have the right solution and the right AI solution that has been taught the correct, has been leveraging the right learning modules and so forth, and the right LMMs and so forth, you're absolutely correct. But AI is just another IT tool, and it's really going to be based on what you're teaching it or what you're using. So it's going to be that garbage in, garbage out, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And that's what I've seen, especially for private companies that are trying to adopt it and they're trying to isolate it and build it for in-house processes and practices to ensure confidentiality and privacy and integrity of the data. But what I keep seeing is it's really going to be dependent on how good that data is, how consistent, how standardized, the quality of the data that's being used, and the modules to teach it. Are you teaching it the right thing so it identifies the right things accurately? Because like anything else, we have to teach it in order for it to get there.
Well, so that's actually the reason that I'm really excited because all large language models have been being trained the same way using transformers until now. Google
Mhm.
released a new paper called Google Titans, and it talked about their new transformers. And what it allows is for the AI to learn from its mistakes, to learn as it goes, and literally everything is sort of like a human. Everything that gets inputted helps to produce a better response tomorrow. And I'm really excited about that because that has been the number one limitation. I mean, AIs have gotten smart. They're doing better on tests than most humans could do. but they can't replace a human in the workforce. And my opinion is that it's because we don't have memory. The second memory is solved, I truly believe that that we will see AI enter the workforce, and
Yeah.
I think it'll probably happen this year.
Yeah, it's there's a very good chance. I mean, I skimmed through an article last night that I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, which is the new China AI from
Yes,
Deep.
DeepSeek. This
Yes,
is
DeepSeek just
insanity.
came out, and now they're the market leader. So it's very interesting how that popped up. They
And
did it
it's
for
free.
a
You can use
fraction
it
of the
right now.
cost.
Yeah, and it's
So
open source on top of that. Open source, it's free. I can go use it. It runs on less computing power,
yeah, it's
probably
scary.
because China doesn't have an NVIDIA. But no, I mean, super impressive. Terrible for the US based AI companies. What, 400 billion already off their market cap today. So trading is just
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to go there. It might get slightly political, but it is slightly funny watching the landscape change so incredibly quickly inside of AI. I don't think anyone knows what tomorrow is going to bring, other than new, very cool technology that's going to make our lives easier. I think.
Yeah, I think the only guarantee when it comes to AI is it's going to continue to get better and become more efficient. The question will be is, do we run into an apocalypse like all the movies show after it gets too good and better than a human, if it ever does get there?
I mean, I think we'll hit singularity this year. Maybe not AGI, but singularity, where it's smarter than a human. I think we're going to hit this year. And honestly, I've met some people that that maybe aren't as smart as Chad GPT's 3 model. So forget about O1 or 111 Pro. But I mean, jokes aside, it is interesting. They even have a brain in the cloud that you can rent. Did you hear about this?
I did hear a little bit about it. I'm not real familiar with it. I've heard it in conversations, but it's scary out there, all the AI stuff of what it can and can't do. It makes you wonder how many of us will become obsolete depending on the industry you're in.
I know. I've my career, my life has been around computers and securing them. If an AI can just do it all and replace us, like what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Hopefully, I built that AI so I can make money off of deploying it.
Yeah, you want to be part of the the band as it
Exactly.
continues to grow and keeps playing, so that way you're not left behind. But it'll be interesting. I
It
think right now the biggest challenge is organizations trying to understand where it fits in their business model, because it isn't a one size fits all, and that's what it seems that a lot of organizations just hear these wonderful success stories and they just think they can adopt it to do everything in their organization. It's like, yeah, it's not there yet. Or you don't
No.
have the ability to teach it the uniqueness of your organization
I,
because you
I,
don't know where to begin.
I will say I've seen some really good use cases.
Oh, yeah.
For example, one of the things that we did, excuse me, one of the things that we did here was that we had built different agents that specialize in different things. And so we took our entire sales playbook, put it into an AI, and gave our SDRs access to this. And so they'll say, well, here's, they can literally just copy and paste their messages from LinkedIn in there, and it'll generate a message that's on point, has our messaging, knows our playbook, how to go about getting people to actually respond. And so I've seen that work. But I think part of the reason that works is because it's specialized to a very specific task. And when I hear about these AIs that are like deployed across an enterprise of 40,000 people, I question how you could even get it to retain the amount of information it's going to need to be effective across that many people. And if you can, how do you monitor and protect that information and prevent, I don't know, a temp worker who's been here for 3 days and just, immigrated from Russia from being able to get access to that? Not saying that they would have malicious intent, but that's the reason we work off of least privilege. Ah, sorry, I got on my soapbox there.
No,
Um,
it's a great point. I mean, I've been working with various clients that they definitely want to be cutting edge, but what they don't understand is adopting AI requires a level of maturity from an organizational process. What you just described, I'm assuming, and you can slap me and let me know that that's not the case, that you had some structure. There was some consistency on what you guys are doing across the board. So you're teaching the AI how you conduct that business, and now it's able to mimic that. But if the
yeah,
organization, if everyone's doing it different, the documentation is unclear of a standard process, and it's the wild west. It's going to be much harder for the AI to adopt that and give a consistent output, because you're already having those problems to begin with if there's no standardization
yeah,
templates, and the environment is kind of crazy. So that's usually the first step that I tend to try to have discussions
yeah.
when I'm helping people is, where are you today? How good is your process? What do you want to automate? Because it just goes back to the original problems that IT has always had. If there's no structure and no standardization, everybody's doing their own thing. That's when things get messy and it becomes a little bit hard to control and improve quality.
Now, AI for the purpose of AI that makes no sense, but I do think that it is changing and will continue to change the world in ways we can't even fathom.
And I agree.
Like I predict computers, the mouse, the keyboard is all going to go away. It's going to be completely speak and touch interface in the very near future here.
I can't wait because I'm constantly mistyping stuff. So
So I use the ChatGPT app on my computer, and I'll just talk to it. So instead of trying to type out emails nowadays, I just do this stream of consciousness to it, and then I end it with, okay, now put that into an email for me. It generates it, and I may have to make a few tweaks, but I'll tell you, that is my favorite thing about AI is not wasting so much time writing emails. I know what I want to say, but it's like it's crafting those words that take so long. Not any longer. So
yeah, I've tried doing that with Copilot and have had some success, since that's what we're using today. Right now, we're kind of keeping the gates closed and approaching the AI stuff carefully, since we deal with so much sensitive information. We don't want to
yeah,
risk doing anything that ends up coming back to bite us. But
yeah.
yeah, it definitely. I try to use the voice stuff all the time, and Siri definitely does not ever understand what I'm saying.
Right? I will say I like Google's voice thing better because it translates in real time and the words just pop in there. Whereas with OpenAI, I talk for 2 to 3, 5 minutes, and then I upload it and it translates it all or transcribes it all then. And sometimes that fails. And so that 5 minutes worth of me talking is just lost.
Yeah.
Whereas with Google, it's never lost. And Google, I mean, they're quickly emerging as the dominant player. And when you combine that with their Willow capability, which they haven't told us what they're using it for yet. I have a feeling that we're going to definitely see some interesting stuff. So,
It's
um,
an exciting time. There's so
it
many
is.
things going on, and it's hard to keep up. What do you focus on, and where do you start? Because you can't do it all. Everything costs money. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, along that line, and this is way off the subject of the human element, but how do you keep up? Because it is an industry that's moving incredibly fast, and we're expected to be the experts.
So me personally, or is it more general in the
And just
industry? The
in general,
question.
tips like how do you keep up with it? I mean, for me, I there's definitely a few influencers that I follow, like on TikTok and stuff like that. But there's also just the sites and the news feeds, and heck, I even have a agent now in GPT that goes and scrapes for new AI stories every day for me. So
So I do use a platform. I use the free version, since uh, I use Feedly because it just makes it easy, more from a security perspective. I haven't subscribed to their AI capabilities yet. But even with that, there's so much information out there, and due to the fact that I'm in the security side of the house, I tend to focus more on the security news. It does get overwhelming. I will tell you, I don't ever feel like I'm caught up. It's just, I feel
I
like it's
hear you.
impossible. There's so many moving things, so many new solutions. Everybody's improving what the next person did, and then all the security threats and all the different ransomware groups that keep popping up. I don't know how anybody keeps up. I know that there's a couple of guys in my team and within my professional network that they seem to be dictionaries and they know everything, and I just don't. I'm not one of those guys, to be completely honest, because there's just information overload everywhere you
There
go.
is. There is. I joke, like, I remember when I was younger, I would remember, like, every detail of movies, and now that I'm older, I don't remember any of it. Like, I can watch a movie tomorrow and go rewatch it a week later and be like, "Oh, I don't think I've ever seen this before." It's not quite that bad, but I
I
barely
hope not.
retain any of it, and, and I joke, I think it's because, there's just so much else that I have to retain that's just the
Yeah,
non-important stuff just out the window. Um, but
yeah,
no, I
and
mean,
and
go ahead.
balancing your personal life is hard too these days with all the information you're gathering from what's going on with current events, your family
Yeah.
life, and everything. Sometimes I mix up the two.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Well, I am a tech founder, which means I have a very difficult time leaving work at work when I go home. I just switch locations. I go from the office to home and I continue to work on my laptop. Okay. So AI threats, as long as we're on the subject, what have you seen from a threat perspective? I mean, are you seeing AI-driven phishing? Have you seen any deep fakes?
So we've me personally, I've witnessed a few customers that they had deep fakes come in. We've seen social engineering attempts to tarnish organizations that look like they're generated by AI. Phishing emails we've seen as well increasing because they're getting better. There's less misspelled words and stuff like that tend to catch people off guard that are looking for those original tell signs that they're used to. Um, but overall, I think the biggest challenges for AI security are those foundational controls when it comes to most organizations. When we're having conversations about AI security, I like to take a step back and see how mature their security program is with everything that's not AI. Because again,
Yeah.
AI is just a technology that's sitting on top of your existing infrastructure. If you're going to try to bring it in house and connect it to your internal systems, and it's only going to be as secure as that foundation and where you're pulling the data from. If you're using databases that are already in place, what's the security around those? If they're very laxed and weak, it's going to weaken your AI footprint. So it's
Absolutely.
really more the integrated components that we keep seeing posing the most security risk. It isn't the AI components themselves right off the bat. It's
I
really those foundational components.
I agree, and on the foundationals, when I look at cybersecurity, I see so many times where they have all the, people, groups have all these tools, but then I look at their systems and they don't have the basic configurations to harden the system there.
Exactly.
And their security awareness training is only annually. So, they're not hardening their people either. And I am personally a massive advocate of let's start with the basics, harden our systems, harden our people, and then we worry about all those other things. Because truly, that's where you get the most value out of your investment, and it's low cost, it's easy stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and I preach that all the time to people that I work with when we're discussing cybersecurity is you got to have a strong foundation, which is your basic controls, the controls that just have to be there. You can't build a house without a strong foundation. Otherwise, your house is going to look pretty, but it's going to crumble after a while because there's nothing supporting it. And it's the same thing with your security program. You can buy and invest in all these beautiful tools and advanced stuff, but without that foundational maturity, you're never really going to get the return on investment that you're looking for from any of those advanced tools.
Yeah, no, I mean it's true. Speaking of return on investment, my opinion is that the best way to measure your return on investment when it comes to security tools is to really benchmark them against what I call the three core metrics. Are we reducing our number of incidents? Are we reducing our time to detection? Are we reducing our time to resolution? To me, they don't have to impact all of those, but if you have investments that aren't impacting any one of those numbers, I would argue that there may not be ROI there.
And I would agree. And the measurement that I like the most, and the one that I tend to start off with, is mean time to resolution. I feel like that's something that's overlooked constantly, and it's probably because of the way I categorize it. So, let's use vulnerability management, for example, and patching. A lot of organizations are scanning thousands of systems, and they identify vulnerabilities that were missed. How long does it take to close those holes? Those holes now become your biggest risk within the organization. And many organizations, since it's we got 90% covered, they tend to ignore that 10% where that's the weak link.
10% is way more than enough to get in and get control of everything and cause somebody a very bad day. As an ethical hacker, it took one mistake. That's what it took generally for me to get in.
And that's something I preach to all my clients when they're doing user awareness, user security and awareness training and phishing campaigns. Oh, we're down to 5%. We used to be 10. We're down to 5% out of 500 users. And I'm like, please understand that the metrics are there to show that you're improving, but all it takes is one.
So and 5%, you're gonna get popped. That's not low
exactly enough. So I know there's industry standards and there's all these metrics that's like, if you're under 5%, you're showing good progress, but that's all it is. It's you're showing good progress and you're moving the needle down. But the goal is you want to be as close to zero as possible, because all it takes is one user. One click and the compromise happens.
I have hundreds of thousands of users on my system. And one of the things that we found that was really interesting to me, I thought there was one of those 80-20 rule things happening inside of security awareness. And what we found was that it was actually 1.2% of people on average account for nearly 90% of the total risk. What that means is if you're not getting down to 1 or sub 1% phish click rates, you're not even really mitigating any of your risk. And there's a lot of studies that have shown that if you go look in academia, it's, every other person getting their PhD is, well, does security awareness training reduce phishing susceptibility? And the answer is no. Traditional training doesn't. And in fact, in some cases, they got worse. They clicked on more phishing after the training. So we got to change our approach as well. And that's the reason that I'm a really big fan of micro training. If we can, well, I have this story. You actually used to work for a big law firm. And so I was working with this group, and they said, we won't allow you to train our users for more than 1 hour a year. Initially, I'm like, man, this guy's an idiot. Just being honest, that was my first thought. I thought he was an idiot. And then I realized maybe he's not. Because as I thought about it, I was like, well, 60 seconds, if we break it down into a 60-second chunk, well, we could actually send a 1-minute video every week of the year, and we're still not even at a full hour. And I was like, what if we break it into 30 seconds? Now we can actually send videos twice a week, every week of the year, and we're still not at an hour. And that was what helped me realize that, and I guess my degree in marketing, but that helped me realize, hey, we've really got to apply marketing rules to cybersecurity. So if I want you to have a good password, I need to essentially make commercials about it and advertise to you.
Yeah, it's all about keeping security top of mind. And that can happen with a 10-second video, an hour training. Most likely their mind is exhausted of hearing all the security concepts.
Yeah.
So it's always better, in my opinion, to break them down into smaller chunks throughout the year. At a minimum, I usually recommend at least quarterly instead of doing it once a year and cram everything in once a year, which is the common practice in a lot of organizations. But I feel like you want security top of mind. And that's what I believe the phishing campaigns do. Most users won't even notice the phishing campaigns because you're getting hit with spam to begin with and real life attempts. It's just going to all blend in. But if they click and have that mistake against one of your phishing campaigns, at least it's damage free. And it also lets them know that they got caught, because when they get caught in real life, unless that threat actor immediately ransoms their machine and everything starts flashing red, they have no idea that they just gave away the keys to the kingdom.
9 times out of 10, they don't. Yeah. And that's the reason that I am against exploiting users with phishing simulations. I don't care if they're going to type in their password and their username. In fact, I think it's a terrible practice. I think every vendor in this space should get rid of that feature. The reason is because these tools are not for penetration testing, which means I don't need to gather credentials. And at the moment a user realizes their mistake, they are uniquely susceptible to learning. What happens is they have an emotional response. Oh, crap. That's an emotion, right?
Yeah.
And when they have that emotional response, it's creating new mental pathways or new neural pathways in their brain. We can hijack that to get really good retention on training, which means when they make that mistake, the first thing that needs to happen is say, oops, you made a mistake. Here were some of the red flags, like urgency that you need to notice. And I think it's those little things. We don't need to talk to people about, well, if you click here, you can go to show headers and you can inspect the headers, and then you can go here and plug this IP into VirusTotal. It's terrible advice for a user.
That is excellent for somebody who's technical, but for your average business user, they just don't understand. It scares them away from even trying. They just don't want to even hear it. They shut down.
Exactly. So it has to be more of a, just simple things. Beware of urgency. Beware of anytime you get an email from the CEO. Does the CEO normally email you? No. Okay, and he's asking you for gift cards. Is that a red flag? And the other thing I think there is that when we keep it front of mind, I can teach you today about patching devices, and all you hear is security. But even though we're talking about patching today, it's helping you write better passwords. It's helping you avoid clicking on those fish. Because no matter what the security is about, it reminds you that security is important.
Yes. Yeah. Keeping security top of mind is key in any organization. And it's even more beneficial when those same employees go home and they continue to be aware on a personal level, because half of these people don't even realize how much they're being targeted in their personal email, their free Google accounts, their Yahoo accounts, Outlook accounts. They're getting so much of it. And they all feel great when they're leveraging these tools and there's a junk mail and a spam folder and they think they're protected. But it's the ones that get through those technologies that put them at risk. And if they can't detect them or identify, is this normal for me to get? That's really where the risk comes in. And that's why I often recommend too is the frequency of phishing emails.
Yeah.
We have organizations that they just want to do the checkbox. Once a quarter, we send one email to everyone.
Yeah, you're not even going to get through your risk.
Look, we're down to 0% clicks.
We've identified 16 different domains or types of common fish. If you're sending one a quarter, it's probably not systematic. So you're not even going to get through those 16 in 4 years. But let's say you are actually paying attention and you get through it. 4 years to fully understand your risk to phishing susceptibility.
And variety is key. That's how you're going to determine what each individual gets
you're going to click
or buys into. If you send the same, and then you want to mix it up for all your users too. How often does it happen?
For you, I'm phishing you about swords.
Well, I don't subscribe to anything about sorts, so I'll definitely send that to my spam folder. But the interesting thing too is that how often in an office environment does a person get a spam message and they go, "Oh, I got caught by one," and they go into their chat client and they go, "Be careful, this one's floating around," and now everybody got the same exact type of email phishing attempt, and now people, your numbers aren't accurate. It's always
Well,
good to make sure that they're random and not everyone is getting the same exact messages.
100%. You can't be phishing everyone with the same thing. And the other thing about that is I love water cooler talk. I want them going into Slack and warning people about the fish. I just don't want it to work. And what I mean by that is if you're all getting different fish and you go warn somebody, we are just creating a more secure culture. But if I send one fish to everybody, we're not creating a more secure culture. We're cheating. And I mean, it's the exact same thing that leads us there. The other
The key
thing you
word.
said about taking it home, that is so critical because it
Yeah.
makes them the expert in their personal life. And so then their kids turn to them for security. And when they have to be the expert in their personal life, it brings a new person to work on the next day.
Yeah. Nope, can't agree more. And
It,
the
it,
key word there is that awareness. That's more important out of user security and awareness training is the awareness piece more
yeah,
than
it
anything,
is.
for them being aware. They're never going to be an IT person if they work in finance, but you want them aware to be very careful. And they're aware
Absolutely.
of their surroundings, what's normal, what's not normal, and why those not normal things could be bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we are running low on time, and yesterday I completely missed this question, and I'm not going to miss it 2 days in a row. So carrot or stick? Say you have to, for the rest of your professional life, you can only use one. What are you going to go with and why?
Wow. That is a tough one. Only use one. I'd go. That's a tricky question. You're making me think here.
That was the goal, trying to stump
I
you here.
know,
I
and I
need
don't
to
know
have
where to answer. I
Jeopardy
have
music
security
like
stuff
ready to
floating in
go.
my head. I have
I
just
got some
IT
music.
technology
Let's see.
floating in my head. If I could only use one, I don't know if this is where you're going, but if I could replace email with instant messaging, I would only focus on using instant messaging.
What I mean
Um,
by only use one is carrot or stick. So, like, to get users to care about cybersecurity, do we reward them with pizza
okay,
or do we
yes.
punish
Okay,
them
I've
with,
misunderstood.
I don't
I
know, flash?
misunderstood. Information overload, showing my age too. I would go the carrot. The reason why is you catch more bees with honey, in my opinion, not with lemons. I've always felt positive reinforcement. It gives you better results than negative reinforcement. There are times that you have to use negative reinforcement, but I consider that worst case scenario or last resort. In my experience, working with user communities and so forth, making it positive for them and how it's going to help them and improve their situation instead of telling them you're going to be punished if you don't do it has always resulted in more positive outcomes, even from a leadership perspective.
I agree
Um, my
wholeheartedly.
team members, it's all about development. What can I do for them? I'm never their boss. I work with them and I'm here to enable them. And I may try to make the environment and the culture as possible as positive as possible so that they feel empowered and they don't feel like somebody's babysitting them or trying to act like a parent. I have kids at home, and even with my kids, I try to take the carrot side of the house. But at work, definitely, you don't want to micromanage. You want to empower your folks. You want to leverage their smarts because you hired them for a reason. And focusing on the carrot side of the house is usually what bears the most positive results for me.
Agreed. I mean, and it impacts creativity. When you get negative, it can have a negative impact across the whole
Yes.
enterprise, and that can hit your profit margins.
Yes.
That's the reason I'm surprised that to this day, American Express still has a 3 strikes and you're out policy with phishing. I don't know how on earth they haven't had an impact to their money. or their revenue off of that. But I mean, those practices are still used, and I think that you're never going to get those really low click rates that way. Meanwhile, I work with, like I said, hundreds of thousands of users, and we're regularly able to get those click rates. But it's all about creating that positive relationship. That's part of the reason that I think phishing needs to be you need to warn your users before you fish. I like to make a game out of it, but you don't even have to make a game out of it. But I do think you need to warn your users so they're not surprised and they don't get an email from HR saying that they're getting a bonus and then they get in trouble. So I do think it's really critical that you warn them and then you make sure they know the second they made the mistake. If they don't realize their mistake, how are they going to correct it?
No, I would agree. I mean, like I said, there's times that you need to pull out the stick. There's certain people and personality that only respond to the stick, but for the most part, the carrot is the way to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so one last question before we end the show. One of the studies that I saw said that when you can connect something or the training to somebody's actual role or position within the company, that it becomes 15 times more effective. I assume the same is true when you connect it to somebody's home life. That's my assumption, but regardless. So what do you think about, A, what do you think about role-based training? And B, what roles should we actually be focusing on? Because it's a big job. You can't do all of it.
So the role-based training to me, I normally recommend it when an organization has a mature training program already. And that's the next evolution of it, in my opinion, to get better. It's not for everyone. It isn't just you train everyone in every single job role based on their role. I normally recommend that you focus on the departments or business units that are actively being targeted by threat actors, finance, HR, marketing, legal, where the sensitive data is, and giving them some kind of training that aligns with what they do. Sometimes, especially if it's broken down and it's not technical, it's more to what they understand from a business perspective, allows them to understand the risk better when you can associate those risks to their job role or the data that they manage. But you shouldn't deploy it, in my opinion, to everyone in the organization. Try to heighten the sensitivity and that awareness to those people that you know are going to be targeted, because that's what's going on in the real world. That's what you're seeing in the news, the fraud attempts, the financial fraud, employee direct deposit manipulation, changing ACH numbers, wire transfer number changes.
Or like during housing, people making a purchase and wiring their entire down payment to the wrong place.
To the wrong place, exactly. Focusing on the things that matter, the threats that are real life, because they also will see that in the news too, and then they'll start to create that connection of, you're not just teaching me garbage that I'm never going to use. It applies to me. And I think that helps.
That's a critical part, is making sure they know that this isn't just something that happens in the news. This is something that will happen to you.
Exactly.
It has to be personal.
Exactly. But I do believe it requires a good foundational training program, because that gives you that basics. And this takes it to the next level. I also believe that IT, though, due to the fact that the IT department and security personnel deal with so much sensitive data, they are definitely unique. And that's where you start with the role-based training, because their mistakes can leak across the organization and have a negative impact no matter what they're touching, because they tend to have privileged access and more power than the average bear. So role-based is usually where I start, is development, secure coding, training awareness and stuff like that, to make sure that they're up to date from a secure coding practices, not just learning the basics of security and how to avoid getting phished. There's more to it for a developer and IT administrators and so forth. And your security people need to stay current as well.
Yeah, I mean, phishing is just the tip of the iceberg. When I was an ethical hacker, it was those mistakes of the developers or mistakes of IT or mistakes of network admins or even HR that led to me being able to get access to everything. And so, yes, we focus a lot on phishing, but there's so many other elements of human error that can lead to a complete compromise.
And it goes back to the carrot. It should be part of the program in the organization. It should be a plus. It shouldn't. You want to show that you're investing in your developers and your IT folks and getting them training that's going to make them more efficient and continue to evolve them in their jobs so that it's a positive outcome for them. It should be included in the budget. I see so many organizations that there's no training programs for IT for their developers. There's no kind of security training. Oh, we have budget for conferences and they can use that if they want. That doesn't show you're vested in your people. Make it part of their objectives. Make sure there's always money for it because it's important. If it's important to the organization, they're going to also see the importance of it. If it's a nice to have, they're not going to spend an hour or 2 hours or more taking training if the organization is not driving it as an important item.
Well, and insurance providers are starting to look at that too. It's not just we can do the once a year training and get away with it. There's a lot of cyber liability policies that have been denied in recent years as a result of not doing enough from a training perspective, or not fully having MFA deployed, or there's these 4 or 5 core items that you have to do, and if you're not doing them, it's getting about impossible to get cyber liability insurance.
Yes. Yeah, and it's something that I feel they probably should have pulled the trigger on many, many years ago. They waited until a lot of money was fed to organizations. They were looking at revenue and profitability, and they weren't really paying attention to what they were really insuring. Right?
Yeah.
I think we get beat up more for car insurance than we were getting beat up for security insurance, which
I know
the risk there is probably even bigger, and the costs associated are a lot worse. So it's just interesting now they're putting
no big deal. We'll write you a policy. Sure.
Yeah. Because I don't think they thought it was ever going to happen. Oh, it's not going to happen.
And then it did.
And then they're like, why is this happening all over the place? Oh, half of our policyholders don't even have a security program. That should have been one of the first questions you asked to begin with before you insured them.
Yeah, agreed.
Very, very interesting.
Agreed. Well, hey, we are out of time here. Any last words before we wrap the show?
No, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity, inviting me on. And last words, I don't know if they're last words or wisdom, but again, just focus on those foundational controls. Don't try to implement DLP if you don't have foundational good patching practices. You're just going to be investing in solutions and technology that you're never going to get that return on investment unless you start with the core controls and then move from there and continue to complement them from a defense and def perspective.
Yes. Okay. So for all of Luis's customers, listen to this guy. Do exactly what he says.
Well, again, thank you very much, Joshua. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great one. And for those of you joining remotely, be sure and be secure.